What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton's crash at the Dutch Grand Prix wasn't really about the weather or a simple driver error? What if the 7-time world champion's most brutally honest post-race comments have just exposed a fundamental flaw in Ferrari's championship dreams? And what if this revelation means that Hamilton's move to Ferrari, the most hyped transfer in F1 history, might actually be unraveling before our eyes? These aren't just dramatic questions. The evidence is right there in Hamilton's own words after his dramatic crash at Turn 3 in Zandvoort, and what he revealed has sent shockwaves through Maranello that no one saw coming. Let's start with what happened on track. 23 laps into the Dutch Grand Prix, Hamilton lost control of his SF25 at Turn 3 and crashed out in dramatic fashion. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't your typical racing incident that drivers usually brush off with diplomatic answers. Instead, Hamilton did something that stunned the paddock. He pulled back the curtain completely. No PR-friendly quotes, no diplomatic deflection, no blaming external factors. He delivered what can only be described as one of the most emotionally honest and technically damning assessments we've seen all year. Hamilton admitted that what happened wasn't normal for him. And when a driver of his caliber, someone who's built his entire legacy on dancing cars through impossible conditions, uses that kind of language, it's not just a comment. It's a warning siren. The crash itself was dramatic enough, but the real impact came afterward when Hamilton stood in front of those cameras and laid it all bare. He described the SF25 as unpredictable and unstable, saying it doesn't react to his inputs in a way that inspires trust. But here's what makes this revelation even more significant. Zandvoort wasn't a one-off incident. This was simply the place where everything boiled over. The signs have been there for months. Remember Hungary? Hamilton suffered a humiliating Q2 exit and finished outside the points. The weekend was a disaster, but Ferrari and the media painted it as just a bad weekend. Now we know it was symptomatic of something much deeper. The cruel irony is that Zandvoort had started so promisingly. In qualifying, Hamilton was just a 10th off Charles Leclerc. His long run pace looked solid. For the first time in weeks, he seemed engaged, focused, even happy. The team thought they were finally turning the corner, but that fragile progress was shattered in an instant. The crash didn't just wreck the car, it shattered the illusion that things were finally improving. And then came the penalty. As if the DNF wasn't enough, the FIA handed Hamilton a 5-place grid drop for Monza after determining he had failed to slow sufficiently under double yellow flags. But what Hamilton said next about the real cause of these problems is what has Ferrari's engineers working around the clock. What Hamilton revealed next was the most damaging part of his assessment. He didn't just criticize the car's performance. He exposed a fundamental philosophical mismatch between himself and the machine he's been given. Hamilton was brutally honest about feeling disconnected from the car. He said that even after hours in the simulator, the instability at the rear makes it impossible to build rhythm. When he pushes, the response is unpredictable. When he tries to back off and drive conservatively, the car still catches him out. This isn't just about setup tweaks or minor adjustments. According to Hamilton's own words, some of the most basic feedback he's given hasn't been fully addressed. Not because Ferrari is ignoring him, but because the current car simply can't be molded into what he needs. The SF25's development path, particularly around the rear suspension and brake-by-wire system, has created a machine that Leclerc can manage, but Hamilton can't bend to his will. This isn't a question of skill. It's a question of philosophy. This machine wasn't made with him in mind. But the most revealing part of Hamilton's comments was when he opened up about the emotional toll. He admitted that part of why he came to Ferrari was to rediscover his joy for racing, to reconnect with the passion that made him fall in love with the sport. But that spark is hard to find when the very car you're driving feels like it's fighting against you. This revelation has caused a shockwave through Maranello because Ferrari had banked everything on Hamilton being the driver who could finally take them back to the top. His leadership, his feedback, his championship-winning experience. All of it was meant to lift the team. Instead, his presence is forcing Ferrari into deeper introspection, not because he's failed, but because he's revealing what the team hasn't been willing to admit. The SF25 is not a championship car, and worse, it might never be. Fred Vasseur has been one of Hamilton's biggest defenders, both publicly and privately, but even he knows that something fundamental must change. Whether that's a complete shift in car philosophy, more aggressive development choices, or a total rethink of the engineering approach heading into 2026, decisions are looming fast. Because what's happening at Monza this weekend will reveal whether Ferrari is ready to face the truth Hamilton just exposed. The timing couldn't be more dramatic. Monza, the temple of speed, Ferrari's home turf, Hamilton's first Grand Prix in red in front of the Tifosi. It was meant to be a celebration, a moment of triumph. Instead, with a grid penalty, a crisis of confidence, and fundamental car problems, it's become a pressure cooker. What Hamilton's revelation really exposes goes beyond just car performance. It reveals a deeper identity crisis at Ferrari. When they signed Lewis Hamilton, they didn't just sign a world champion. They signed a driver who spent over a decade mastering the art of building winning teams, shaping culture, and creating environments where success isn't just possible, it's expected. But right now, Ferrari isn't holding up their end of the bargain. Hamilton's comments at ZANDVOORT weren't just technical criticism, they were a philosophical alarm bell. He exposed the DNA of a team still clinging to old habits, still stuck in cycles of hope, disappointment, and missed opportunity. The crash at turn 3 wasn't simply a driver losing the rear end, it was symbolic of a deeper disconnect, a supremely talented driver behind the wheel of a machine that refuses to meet him halfway. And the cost of that mismatch is rising with every race, every update, every press conference that ends with more questions than answers. Yet Hamilton's revelation wasn't just a warning. It was also an invitation, a chance for Ferrari to look inward and ask the hard questions. Are we building a team that embraces change or resists it? Are we adapting to modern F1 or dragging our legacy behind us like dead weight? Are we willing to become the team Lewis Hamilton thought he was joining? The answers to those questions will shape not just the remainder of 2025, but Ferrari's entire trajectory moving forward. Monza this weekend isn't just another race. It's a crucible, a test of character, commitment, and courage. Hamilton will walk out into that storm with a 5-place grid penalty, knowing the Tifosi will roar for miracles while the media circles for answers. But the real question isn't whether he can deliver something extraordinary in a fundamentally flawed car. The real question is whether Ferrari's leadership is finally ready to admit that their 7-time world champion might be right about everything he just revealed. Because if they're not, this season might just be the beginning of a much larger unraveling. What do you think? Is Hamilton's brutal honesty the wake-up call Ferrari needed? Or has this revelation exposed problems too deep to fix? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inside analysis of the stories shaping Formula One.